So we are starting with semester 3 lectures now, and initially I will be giving you just the introduction about the entire semester 3, which include basically now intermediate micro 1 paper, intermediate macro first paper, and your advanced MME. So far you have covered your semester 1 and semester 2, and that was introductory. So it was introductory micro and introductory macro. Now it is moving from introductory to the intermediate stage, and later on it will move to the advanced micro and advanced macro. So there are three core paper here: intermediate micro 1, intermediate macro 1, and the advanced macroeconomics, advanced MME. Now these lectures are according to the new education policy. So the syllabus is come new and it is as per the new education policy. Okay, so you all are basically the first batch of that new education policy. So you covered your semester 1 according to that policy, semester 2 according to that policy, and now for semester 3. The most significant change in semester 3 is basically in this paper intermediate micro 1. I think after more than 10 years, the syllabus of intermediate micro has been completely revised in the sense that we used to read Hallvarian, Nicholson, Snyder, but now those reference book has been replaced by the new sources. So that we will be conducting the lecture according to the new sources. I will be explaining what are the different new sources. So far we have some information, but that is not complete and it is not updated on the D school site. Once it will be updated on the D school site, it will be considered as a final, but provisionally we have enough information to start the lecture, and in all likelihood it is going to be the final as well. So starting with the first paper, that is intermediate micro 1. This intermediate micro 1 syllabus according to the new syllabus is divided into 3 units. Unit 1 is consumer behavior, which deals about the behavior of a household or behavior of a consumer. Like that means what consumer wants to buy, what consumer prefers to buy, what consumer can buy. What consumer wants to buy will be determined by his utility or preference. What consumer can buy will be determined by his budget. What consumer will actually buy will be determined by both. What I want to buy and what I can buy. Both will be determining the demand or the choice. So there are few chapters related to the preference and utility, budget constraint, demand and choices. So those topics will be discussed in consumer theory, and the source for consumer theory is different now. Source for consumer theory is different. You can just refer to that. So far जो provisional syllabus available है, it is for unit number 1, that is consumer behavior, which deals with preference and utility 1 chapter, budget and choice, income and substitution effect, demand derivation, labor supply, and one person welfare. So there are various chapters, chapter number 2 to chapter number 6. Chapter number 2 to chapter number 6, and it is written SF. SF is basically Serrano and Feldman. So just reference book, earlier it used to be from the Hallvarian, so now it is from the Serrano and Feldman. So short में basically SF की reading आप कह सकते हैं. Second part is basically optional reading, so you can ignore that part for the time being. So the first unit is basically chapter number 2 to chapter number 6. Second unit is decision making with under uncertainty. Here we will be discussing about the risk involved, risk and uncertainty, how to calculate risk premium, what is certainty equivalent. That means if there are different consumption bundle, but out of those different consumption bundle there is a risk associated, we are not sure about that consumption bundle. In that condition we have to make a choice under uncertainty. So that will include mainly chapter number 6 from AMG. And third unit is producer behavior and market. Producer behavior and market will include profit maximization. Technology basically means here production function here. Then profit maximization, cost minimization, short run and long run supply curve. But in semester 3, this market will include only perfect competition market. Your semester 4 will start with monopoly, monopolistic, oligopoly. But in sem 3, We will just introduce about the profit maximizing condition, the basic of the market structure, and we will be covering only the perfect competition form of market. So these are the different unit, and for this third unit also the reference will be SF. So mainly we can say the revenue source will be the Serrano and Feldman reading. Now it has replaced the Holvarian and Nicholson and Snyder. It means actually earlier it used to be from the Holvarian का एक वर्कबुक भी होता था, वर्कबुक के कुछ क्वेश्चन भी थे. Although for practice we may refer to those also, but it is not now recommended for you. So you should be focusing more and more on the new sources and expect more and more new question now. That means the past year question to some extent I can't say that it is altogether not relevant, because the concept of preference, utility, budget choice will be similar. So you can, for practice you can refer to some question, but remember the sources are different, the way of description is different, therefore you can expect a different sort of question altogether. So in this micro part, 3 units are there: consumer behavior, decision making under uncertainty, and producer behavior and the market. What will be the composition of question? You have to wait for few more days. Once that update will be coming, that what will be the format of the question. In that detailed reading list, everything will be there. But the information which is available, we are just starting lecture from that, because your colleges are going to open now from 16th. So we are starting with intermediate micro 1 lecture first. As far as intermediate macro 1 is concerned, the syllabus updated for intermediate macro. Again it has 3 units. First unit is short run and medium run equilibrium. Short run and medium run equilibrium, one chapter will be labor market, then aggregate supply, aggregate demand, natural rate of unemployment, and the reference for this will be Blanchard. So Blanchard की जो reference book होगी, that will be mainly it will be chapter number 6, 7, 8 and 9. So if it is for the first unit, it will be Blanchard and chapter number 6, 7, 8 and 9. Then second unit is talking about Phillips curve and the theory of expectation. Within expectation it can be adaptive expectation and rational expectation. So Phillips curve and expectation. And third unit is microeconomic foundation of macro behavior. Microeconomic foundation of macro behavior. That means we are studying macro, but we are studying the microeconomic foundation of that. Even for the macroeconomics, the foundation is micro. So in what way micro is the foundation for macro will be explained here in terms of consumption theory. Consumption will have various concepts, like so far in semester 2 we have said that consumption is a function of income, और वहाँ पे consumption का equation लिखते थे, it is autonomous consumption plus small c into disposable income, and disposable income is income minus taxes. But remember, taxes are always imposed on your current income. That means we were assuming that consumption is a function of current income, but here there are different hypotheses. Consumption could be a function of current income according to Keynes. Consumption could be a function of permanent income according to Friedman. Consumption could be a function of life cycle income according to Ando Modigliani. Consumption could be a function of intertemporal income according to Fisher. So there are different types of hypotheses in the consumption part, as well as in the category of investment. So consumption and investment, but now those chapters most probably it is going to be from the Branson. So as compared to micro, less changes you can expect in macro as far as the reading is concerned. So as far as reading concerned, जो यहाँ पे although you have to wait for the final, but in all probability micro completely different हो रहा है, और macro more or less we can say it will continue to remain the same. So we will start with the intermediate micro 1 lecture. Intermediate micro 1, heading is unit number 1, Unit number 1 is consumer behavior. First unit is consumer behavior, and just write down the chapters included in that consumer behavior. So the syllabus is basically you have to cover chapter number 2 to chapter number 6, 2 to 6, chapter number 2 to chapter number 6. So chapter number 2 is preference and utility. Just write down the content for this first unit. Chapter number 2 is preference and utility. In this chapter we will be explaining basically what consumer prefer. His preference will be explained here. What is the behavior of a consumer? So in order to explain the behavior of consumer, first of all we must know what consumer want to buy, what consumer likes. So preference will be determined by the utility. That means if I say that one bundle is preferred, so a consumer will prefer that bundle only when he get more utility from that bundle. So how we can calculate utility? So preference is linked with that utility. I will elaborate that, but just write down complete here the content part. Chapter number 3 will be budget constraint and optimal choice. Budget constraint and optimal choice. Budget constraint and optimal choice. This first chapter explain what consumer wants to buy. This will explain what consumer can buy. Now if you combine both, then we will determine what consumer will actually buy. Actually he will buy that bundle from which he get most or maximum utility. So highest utility point will be referred as the optimal choice, but optimal choice is always subject to the constraint. Within the budget constraint, consumer will try to maximize his own utility, and that point will be referred as the optimal choice. Then we move from chapter number 3 to chapter number 4. Chapter number 4 is demand function. Chapter number 4 will be demand function. That means for different type of utility function, for different type of utility function you will calculate optimal choice, और जो bundle हमने buy किया that will be basically your demand. So when we have to write demand function for different type of utility function in that chapter. Then we move from chapter number 4 to chapter number 5, which is supply function for labor. Supply function for labor. Supply function for labor and savings. Supply function for labor and savings. That means when we study the supply curve or supply function of labor, तो household के एंगल से एक्सप्लेन करना है कि as wage rate increases, how many labor hour person will be willing to work. But for an individual worker, we find that labor supply curve bends backward. That means up to a certain wage, worker will work more, but after a certain wage, worker will work less. So why it happens? We have to explain that by using substitution effect and income effect. And the application side is on the saving. That means as rate of interest will rise, what will be the effect on saving? So just as wage rate rises, we change our working hour. Similarly, when rate of interest changes, we change our saving amount. And then from chapter number 5 to chapter number 6, which is last for unit number 1, that is welfare economics. But this is welfare from one person case. It is not a general equilibrium. We are studying it for one person. That means we are in the micro, we are studying only for one person. This welfare will be again coming in semester 4, but that will be for the 2 person. So there are 2 person, 2 product, 2 factor of production, but here we are referring to only one person. And the welfare actually means here, suppose this chapter is basically application based chapter. Like if there will be a given amount of tax to be collected by government through direct tax as well as through the indirect tax, from out of these 2 tax, from which tax consumer will be better off. in the sense is where utility will be more. That means out of these two tax, which tax consumer will prefer to pay if he has to pay same amount of tax in the both case. So those type of question will be there, we have to discuss in the welfare economy section. So all chapters are basically relevant and important, and the source is basically we have written for this is SF, Serrano and Feldman. तो एक स्पेसिफिकली अभी तक जो अवेलेबल है, ऑल द ऑब्वियसली यू विल आल्सो हैव द कंप्लीट रेफरेंस और रीडिंग लिस्ट for all the unit, but so far what is available with me is that the first initial chapters. So those initial chapters I will be explaining, and apart from that obviously आपको अपने पास reading रखनी है, but we will be providing you some problem set question, and those questions will be from the various sources, like from the past year, it could be from the previous source, and it will obviously include the new sources. तो new source के तो सारे question रहेंगे, but in order to add or in order to practice more question, because I find not that many question there at the end of the chapter, so you have to supplement it from the various other sources. So from other sources also will be providing you that booklet. In that booklet it will be uploaded, you can download it from there, but it will be provided in a supplement manner. That means problem set 1, 2, those will be discussing the questions, explaining the only question part, including from the previous year question. That means you don't need to buy that 10 year. प्रीवियस ईयर में जो रेलिवेंट होगा, जो अपडेटेड होगा और जो इंक्लूड होगा, कंसिस्टेंट होगा विथ योर न्यू सिलेबस, ओनली दैट विल बी प्रोवाइडेड टू यू. मतलब जो इन्फॉर्मेशन ई बुक सेक्शन में अवेलेबल होगा, दैट विल बी अकॉर्डिंग टू योर नीड, करंट जो नीड है उसके अकॉर्डिंगली होना है. क्लियर? सो वी कैन स्टार्ट विद द फर्स्ट चैप्टर विच इज प्रेफरेंस एंड यूटिलिटी. सो चैप्टर नंबर 2. Chapter number 2 is a preference and utility. First of all, when we are discussing this chapter number 2, which is dealing with the preference and the utility, we are explaining the preference of an individual. So preference of an individual means, if I say there is a X bundle, X bundle actually means there will be some quantity of good 1 and some quantity of good 2 in that bundle. For example, suppose I said 10 unit of good 1, 5 unit of good 2, 10 unit of good 1, 5 unit of good 2. This is your X bundle. See, you can say 10 kg of rice and 5 kg of wheat, or 10 apple and 5 banana, whatever be the example. You are comparing that X bundle with the Y bundle. So if I refer to the Y bundle, then you can write it as Y1 comma Y2. If in that bundle there is a less quantity of good 1 and more quantity of good 2, less quantity of good 1, more quantity of good 2, so in that bundle also I am referring to good 1 and good 2. That means when you are comparing two different bundle, the commodity must be same, only the quantity will be different, and that is the first assumption which refers to completeness. Completeness का मतलब हो गया, the two bundle that we are referring must be comparable. We must compare, only then we can make a rank, only they can make a preference, only then we can make a choice. So preference between two bundle can be determined. Now you can prefer X to Y or Y to X, or you could be indifferent between X and Y also. There are all type of preferences. But in order to rank the choice, in order to rank the preference, the two bundle must be complete, in the sense in those two bundle commodity must be same, only its quantity must be different. So if I have taken rice and wheat, तो वो भी rice और wheat होगा, it cannot be apple and banana, because you can't compare utility in that condition. So now question is, if there is one bundle X, other bundle Y, then out of these two bundle, which bundle consumer will prefer? Now consumer preference will depend upon utility function. What consumer will prefer? Consumer will always prefer that bundle from which he get more utility. But when I say more utility or less utility, that means I am quantifying it. But how to quantify utility? For that purpose we write utility function. So utility is a function of good 1 and good 2. Utility is a function of good 1 and good 2. Remember, good 1 और good 2 की एक क्वांटिटी है यहाँ पे 10 और 5 और दूसरे बंडल में 8 और 7 है. Now what will be the utility from that? That depends upon how you write utility function. And there are few important form of utility function. Like it could be written as x1 into x2. So if I write utility from x1 x2 is equal to x1 into x2, तो x1 into x2 means 10, 5 की यूटिलिटी हो जाएगी 50 और 8, 5 की यूटिलिटी हो जाएगी 56. So which bundle will be preferred in that case? 10, 5 you will put there, utility will be 50. Second bundle अगर put करेंगे यहाँ पे तो 8 into 7 56. So in that case you can say that bundle Y will be preferred because Y bundle provide higher utility. But if I write utility function as x1 plus x2, because utility function can be stated in different form. So if I write it as x1 plus x2, in that condition 10 plus 5 utility will be 15 from this bundle, and 8 plus 7 utility will be 15 from that bundle also. So in that case consumer will be indifferent between x bundle and y bundle. But your answer has changed because you have changed the utility function. हमने utility function को change किया है. तो utility can be expressed as x1 into x2. It could be written as x1 plus x2. If I write utility function as minimum of x1 comma x2, minimum of x1 comma x2, then 10 comma 5 you will put 10 comma 5 here and the minimum number will be 5. So utility will be determined by that minimum. So in that case utility will be 5 from this bundle. If you substitute 8 comma 7 here, then minimum number is 7. Utility will be 7 from that bundle. So again you can say that y bundle is preferred based upon that function. Clear? I repeat, if you have written x1 into x2, तो ये बंडल हमने यहाँ पुट कर रखा है, वहाँ से यूटिलिटी कैलकुलेट कर ली. ऑल्टरनेट बंडल को भी यहाँ पुट करेंगे, यूटिलिटी कैलकुलेट करेंगे, और जिस बंडल की यूटिलिटी ग्रेटर होगी दैट विल बी प्रेफर्ड. इफ इट इज x1 प्लस x2, तो सेम बंडल को आपने x1 प्लस x2 करके निकाला 15, 8 प्लस 7 15. यूटिलिटी इज सेम फ्रॉम बोथ बंडल, सो यू आर इनडिफरेंट. बट इफ इट इज मिनिमम, then 10 comma 5 minimum number is 5, 8 comma 7 minimum is 7. Utility will be 7 from that bundle and 5 from this bundle. This first form will be referred as well behaved preference. It is called as well behaved preference. Most common form of preference is that. There are certain properties of it, we will explain. When you write it is x1 plus x2, then good 1 and good 2 are called perfect substitute. So goods can be perfect substitute or it could be imperfect substitute in that first case. If it is written as minimum of, then it is called perfect complement. Goods are complement when both goods must be used together in a fixed proportion. So goods can be perfect substitute for consumer, goods can be perfect complement for the consumer, or it could be imperfect substitute also. There are other form as well. It could be written as log x1 plus x2, or I can write root x1 plus x2. But if you write in that form, then it is referred as quasi-linear. That will be a quasi-linear utility function. Now what is the meaning of quasi-linear utility function? You have to just wait. When we will explain all function in detail, then we will explain why it is called quasi-linear. That means why it is partly linear and partly non-linear. The function could be written as instead of minimum, it could be written as maximum of x1 comma x2. Maximum of x1 comma x2, in that case If you write 10 comma 5, utility will be 10, and if you write 8 comma 7, utility will be 8. फिर इस ये बंडल प्रेफर हो जाएगा. मतलब it is not that there is a fixed answer. Based upon the utility function, your choice or preference between these two bundle can be different. You could be indifferent between x and y. You may prefer x over y. You may prefer y over x. It all depend upon how you write utility function. Clear? So function can be written in any different form also. I can write it as x square, x1 square plus x2 square. In that case the preference will become concave. So there are n number of ways by which you can explain or express the utility function. I have written the most prominent one, and the most prominent one include well behaved, perfect substitute, perfect complement, quasi-linear, maximum function or concave function. So there are few important ones. Now we can start with the first one, that is well behaved. So I think this point is clear. We are basically comparing two different bundle, and out of these two bundle, from which bundle consumer will get more utility or less utility or equal utility, we have to determine, and your answer depend upon how you write utility equation or utility function. So given that basic, you can start with the first one, which is well behaved preference. So once I write it as a well behaved, you will write utility function as x1 comma x2 equal to x1 into x2. Utility equation is written in this form. इसके आगे आप कोई वैल्यू अगर लिख दी जाए, then that value will measure utility. That value will calculate utility. And if you try to plot by writing here good 1 and good 2, then what could be the various combination of x1 and x2 जिसका product 100 हो जाए? There are many, like it could be 5 unit of good 1, 20 unit of good 2. It could be 10 unit of good 1, 10 unit of good 2. It could be 20 unit of good 1, 5 unit of good 2. इन सबका प्रोडक्ट 100 है, मतलब यूटिलिटी विल बी 100. सो यूटिलिटी इज 100 एट पॉइंट ए, यूटिलिटी इज 100 एट पॉइंट बी, utility is 100 at point C. So if utility is same from all three bundle, utility is same, say for example for point A, from point B, from point C. So we can say that consumer is indifferent between A and B, he is indifferent between B and C, and all those bundles along which consumer is indifferent, if you join all those bundles you will get indifference curve. So what does an indifference curve represent? An indifference curve shows various combination of goods from which consumer gets same level of utility. So consumer is getting same level of utility from all those bundles. Briefly that point was introduced in semester 1, but here we will be explaining in detail because we are discussing different form of the utility function. Now if you connect A, B and C, in this case it will be convex to origin. I will explain the reason why it is convex to origin, why it is not a straight line, and when it can be a straight line, when it will be concave. So all type of preferences are there. Remember we have written one example of the utility function. As per that example we have to write the indifference curve equation. Now why it is convex to the origin, why it is negatively sloped, all depend upon the assumptions. What we have made the assumption. So this assumption about the preferences, the assumption about the preferences, remember whenever you draw a curve, suppose this is, in this example it is non-linear. It is non-linear, it means इसका slope decrease हो रहा है at different point, at point A, point B, point C. But can we calculate slope from this equation? Slope is always what? dy by dx. तो अगर हमने इक्वेशन को लिखा हुआ है x1 into x2 is equal to 100, so I can write x2 as 100 upon x1, and to calculate slope you can differentiate it with respect to x1, so that will be minus 100 upon x1 square. अगर आप 100 अपॉन x1 को x1 के रेस्पेक्ट में डिफ्रेंशिएट करते हैं, इट विल बी माइनस 100 अपॉन x1 स्क्वायर. तो अगर a पॉइंट का स्लोप कैलकुलेट करना है, इफ यू वांट टू कैलकुलेट स्लोप एट पॉइंट a, तो एट पॉइंट a व्हाट इज द वैल्यू ऑफ x1? 5. x1 की जगह वहाँ 5 लिख देंगे. तो 100 अपॉन 5 स्क्वायर, दैट विल बी माइनस 4. एट पॉइंट b, हाँ, व्हाट इज द वैल्यू ऑफ x1? 10. तो x1 की जगह वहाँ 10 लिखा. तो 10 square will become 100, so 100 upon 100. So at point B, slope will be equal to minus 1. That means slope has decreased. Just ignore that minus sign. Absolute term में interpret करना, वहाँ 4 है और यहाँ 1 हो गया. So as you move down, slope decreases. Therefore it is convex. If it will be same slope, then line will be straight. अगर हर point पे 4 होता तो line straight हो जाती. तो अलग अलग पॉइंट पे जब आप स्लोप कैलकुलेट करते हैं, लाइक अगर सी पॉइंट पे कैलकुलेट किया तो यहाँ x1 की वैल्यू 20 है. सो इफ यू मार्क देयर 20, देन इट विल बी 20 स्क्वायर. तो 100 by 400, स्लोप विल बी माइनस 1 by 4. सिंस स्लोप इज डिक्लाइनिंग, देयरफॉर इट इज कॉन्वेक्स टू ओरिएंट. बट वी हैव टू गिव द इकोनॉमिक रीजनिंग एज वेल. ठीक है, सिर्फ मैथमेटिकल रीजनिंग नहीं देनी है. वी हैव टू गिव द इकोनॉमिक लॉजिक एज वेल. व्हाई इट इज कॉन्वेक्स टू द ओरिएंट, व्हाई इट इज नॉट अ स्ट्रेट लाइन, what does the feature of convexity imply? Clear? So this is basically the first form. Now to explain the property of this well behaved preference, the reference source basically says, you can write the meaning of indifference curve, just write a definition. An indifference curve represent, an indifference curve represent, an indifference curve represent different combination of goods, different combination of goods that provides, different combination of goods that provides same level of utility, that provides same level of utility, same level of utility. Clear? Just meaning of that. Remember, this is the introductory lecture. यहाँ पे just जो basic concept involved है to understand the entire consumer behavior. I am just introducing to that. Now there are certain assumptions on which preference is based. So entire chapter preference is based upon some assumptions. So assumption number 1. Assumption number 1. Assumption number 1 is talking about completeness. And completeness means, just as stated above, completeness means two bundle must be compared. Only when you can compare one bundle x1 x2 with the alternate bundle y1 y2. When we can compare, only then we can say that whether x1 x2 is preferred, or y1 y2 is preferred, or consumer is indifferent between these two bundles. So completeness actually means that when we are comparing two bundle, in the both bundle commodity must be same, only its quantity is different. So if you are taking rice and wheat here, here also rice and wheat, you can't take a different bundle there. So just mention what do you mean by completeness. Right? Completeness means that two different bundles can be compared. Two different bundles can be compared, and after comparing, consumer can make ordering of those preference. Consumer can make ordering of those bundle. Consumer can make ordering of those bundle. And ordering means what? X could be preferred over Y, Y could be preferred over X, or you are indifferent between X and Y. This also imply that when we compare two different bundle, when we compare two different bundle, then those two bundle must have same commodity. Those two bundle must have same commodity but different quantity. Same commodity but different quantity. अब कंसेप्ट के बहुत सारे एप्लीकेशन साइड भी हैं, जैसे हमने कंप्लीट रैंकिंग की बात है, तो मान लिया सपोज एग्जांपल में क्वेश्चन कह रहा है कि देयर इज इन अ क्लासरूम देयर आर मेनी स्टूडेंट्स A, B, C, D, E. Can we make a ranking according to height? तो आप कहोगे हाइट के अकॉर्डिंगली तो वी कैन मेक अ रैंक. पर्सन कुड बी the height of A could be more as compared to B, less as compared to B, or may have equal height. तो रैंकिंग तो वहाँ पॉसिबल है, बट अगर कह रहे हैं कि मेक अ रैंकिंग अकॉर्डिंग टू द पर्सन हु इज अकॉर्डिंग टू द हाइट एज वेल एज अकॉर्डिंग टू द इनकम और अकॉर्डिंग टू द वेल्थ, तो अब यहाँ पे पॉसिबल है कि पर्सन कुड बी शॉर्टर इन हाइट or person could be the height could be varying but as well as the wealth could also be varying और income could also be varying. तो दोनों कंडीशन सेटिस्फाई नहीं भी हो सकते हैं, तो वहाँ पे वो कंप्लीटनेस का अदम्पशन वायलेट हो जाता है. मतलब जैसे आपने स्टेटमेंट दे दिया कि अगर फुटबॉल कोच हैज़ टू मेक अ रैंकिंग फॉर ऑल द प्लेयर्स अकॉर्डिंग टू द कैंडिडेट हु इज़ फास्टर एंड स्ट्रॉन्गर, तो फास्टर और स्ट्रॉन्गर दोनों के लिए दो कंडीशन डाल दी है. तो जब दो कंडीशन अप्लाई कर लेंगे तो वहाँ पे रैंकिंग इट इज़ नॉट पॉसिबल टू मेक अ रैंकिंग. इन दैट केस वी कैन से दैट कंप्लीटनेस assumption विल नॉट बी satisfied. Then move to assumption number 2. The second assumption talks about transitivity. Second assumption talks about transitivity, and transitivity actually means that if X bundle is preferred over Y bundle and Y bundle is preferred over Z bundle, then if X is preferred to Y, Y is preferred to Z, then X will be preferred over Z. Or you can say that if consumer is indifferent between X and Y, consumer is indifferent between Y and Z, then consumer must be indifferent between X and Z. So that is the meaning of transitivity, and you have to follow that assumption of transitivity when we explain the indifference curve. Any form of indifference curve must satisfy this assumption. So if you apply that concept of transitivity, using that concept we can say that two different indifference curve cannot intersect. Now what is wrong when I draw two intersecting indifference curve? Because if you cross two indifference curve, it will imply that if there is a point A here and point B here, so consumer is indifferent between point A and B because they are on same indifference curve, and every point on same indifference curve gives same utility. Similarly, you can mark point C here. A and C is also on the same indifference curve. So if consumer is indifferent between A and B, he is indifferent between A and C, then consumer must be indifferent between B and C, but that can happen only when B and C is on same indifference curve, which is not the case here. So using that assumption of transitivity, we say that indifference curve cannot cross, they cannot intersect each other. So that is an important property, you have to follow that. Move to assumption number 3. Third assumption says monotonicity. Third assumption is monotonicity, and monotonicity assumption actually imply that simply we can say it means more is preferred or more is better. Monotonicity means more is preferred or more is better. But when more can be better. More can be better only when by consuming more utility will increase. But if utility is increasing, we can say that the marginal utility must be positive, only then total utility will increase. If marginal utility becomes negative, then total utility will decline. So if total utility is declining, then more is not preferred. But we are assuming that we are discussing indifference curve by taking the assumption of monotonicity. So monotonicity actually implies that more is preferred, and it also means that the marginal utility of the commodity is positive. So marginal utility is positive, that is an assumption. And this like for example, suppose if you can say what type of question can be asked from this. If I write utility function from good 1 good 2 as x1 square plus 5x2, मैंने ये फंक्शन लिखा है और क्वेश्चन में कहा जा रहा है कि वेदर दिस यूटिलिटी फंक्शन सैटिस्फाई द assumption ऑफ मोनोटोनिसिटी, वेदर दिस preference function or utility function satisfy the assumption of monotonicity. Then obviously if you know the concept of monotonicity, which means more is preferred, and more will be preferred only when marginal utility is positive. So you will simply calculate marginal utility for x1. And what is the meaning of marginal utility? Change in total utility due to change in x1 keeping everything else constant. So you differentiate this function, utility function, with respect to x1 keeping x2 constant. तो x1 स्क्वायर का डिफरेंशिएशन 2x1 हो जाएगा. बट 2x1 का मतलब है वट एवर बी द वैल्यू ऑफ x1, यूटिलिटी विल बी ट्वाइस ऑफ दैट. बट ट्वाइस ऑफ दैट मीन्स दिस नंबर इज अ पॉजिटिव नंबर. Since it is a positive number, monotonicity is satisfied. Similarly, you calculate marginal utility for good 2, differentiate with x2. In that case, it will be 5. Again, it is positive. So, monotonicity is satisfied for both good 1 and good 2. Monotonicity is satisfied both for good 1 and good 2. So, marginal utility must be positive. But अगर कोई फंक्शन या इक्वेशन वहाँ लिख रहे हैं जिसमें मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी की वैल्यू नेगेटिव आ रही है, देन मोनोटोनिसिटी विल नॉट बी सेटिस्फाइड देयर. क्लियर? सो व्हाट इज द एप्लीकेशन साइड ऑफ दिस? एप्लीकेशन साइड ऑफ दिस assumption is that when we draw indifference curve, it will be negatively sloped only, and it is negatively sloped due to monotonicity. Due to monotonicity, it will be negatively sloped. Actually, when you draw the indifference curve, remember it is a concentric circle. ये concentric circle होता है, but complete circle के फॉर्मेट ड्रॉ नहीं करते जनरली. सर्कल होने के पीछे रीज़न है. If you write here x1 and x2, it can be divided into 4 parts. As we consume more and more of x1, marginal utility of x1 will decrease, but initially it is positive. At this point, we can say that utility reduces to 0, marginal utility becomes 0, and after that it will be negative. Vertical axis पे जब मूव कर रहे हैं, as you consume more of good 2, marginal utility of good 2 will be initially positive. At this point it will be 0 and then it will become negative. So my assumption is monotonicity, and monotonicity means that marginal utility of goods must be positive. So marginal utility of goods will be positive only in this section, which is convex and negative slope. Why not this section? ये वाला सेक्शन क्यों नहीं लेना है? मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी की जो वैल्यू होगी वो सिर्फ पॉजिटिव होगी ओनली इन दिस सेक्शन, ओनली इन दिस रेंज. वाई यू विल नॉट कंसिडर दिस वन? बिकॉज इन दिस रेंज मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी ऑफ गुड 1 इज नेगेटिव. वाई नॉट दिस? Marginal utility of good 2 is negative, and then this is marginal utility of both will be negative. So applying the monotonicity, we can say that indifference curve is negatively sloped. So just add that line. That means assumption is basically more is preferred, so you can mark that point in third assumption. According to this assumption, more is preferred, which also means that marginal utility is positive, full stop. As a result, indifference curve is negatively sloped. Indifference curve is negatively sloped. मतलब जो अपवर्ड स्लोपिंग पार्ट होगा उसको आपको इग्नोर करना है. This next paragraph. This also imply that higher indifference curve represent higher utility. Higher indifference curve represent higher utility. जो इंडिफरेंस कर्व हायर होगा उस पर यूटिलिटी हायर होगी. मतलब इफ यू हैव ड्रॉन वन इंडिफरेंस कर्व, इफ यू ड्रॉ द अनदर इंडिफरेंस कर्व, utility from that higher will be more as compared to this, because suppose I mark any bundle here, good 1 और good 2 की एक वैल्यू ले ली, as compared to A point, if you move to B point, then on that B point quantity of good 1 will be more, and with more of good 1 with same number of good 2 utility will be more, because marginal utility is positive. So application of monotonicity is that indifference curve is negatively sloped and higher indifference curve represent higher level of utility. Clear? तो monotonicity आप चेक कर लोगे न्यूमेरिकल में, मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी कैलकुलेट करना है, वो वैल्यू पॉजिटिव आनी चाहिए, और उसका एप्लीकेशन ये हुआ कि इंडिफरेंस कर्व नेगेटिव स्लोप होगा and higher indifference curve will be representing higher level of utility. Now move from that third to fourth assumption. Assumption number 4. Convexity for indifference curve. Convexity for indifference curve. Convexity for indifference curve. This assumption means that average of consumption bundle are preferred over extreme. Average of consumption bundle are preferred over extreme. Average of consumption bundle are preferred over extreme. Underline that. Average of consumption bundle preferred over extreme. Average preferred over extreme means that if we draw an indifference curve, we can take one average, one extreme bundle. Like if I take one extreme bundle as 5 unit of good 1 and 20 unit of good 2. Another extreme bundle as 20 unit of good 1 and 5 unit of good 2. I have taken two extreme bundle. So you can calculate utility from that extreme bundle. Utility from say 5,20 will be how much? हमने utility का फंक्शन क्या फॉलो किया हुआ है अभी? utility का फंक्शन जो पढ़ रहे हैं वो x1 इंटू x2 है, तो 5,20 की utility क्या हो जाएगी? 5 इंटू 20, that will be 100. What will be utility from 20,5? In that case it will be 20 into 5, again the utility will be 100. Now calculate utility from the average of these two bundle. Now what will be the average of these two bundle? इन दोनों का एवरेज कैलकुलेट कर रहे हैं, तो एवरेज का मतलब हो गया फर्स्ट बंडल में 5 यूनिट ऑफ गुड 1 है, सेकंड बंडल में 20 यूनिट ऑफ गुड 1 है, सो एवरेज ऑफ दिस टू विल बी 20 प्लस 5 अपॉन 2, सो दैट विल बी 12.5 and this will also be 12.5. But what will be utility of that bundle? It will be 12.5 into 12.5, but that utility will be more than 100. That means utility from average is greater than utility from extreme. और एवरेज का बंडल, इसका मतलब है जो एवरेज का बंडल होगा इट विल नॉट बी ऑन सेम इंडिफरेंस कर्व. एवरेज बंडल विल बी लाइक दिस 12.5 and 12.5 विल बी ऑन अ हायर इंडिफरेंस कर्व. ये तभी होगा जब शेप कॉन्वेक्स होता है. तो एवरेज प्रेफर्ड और एक्सट्रीम एक्चुअली मीन्स दैट. तो अगर कोई फंक्शन गिवन है वहाँ से आपको कैलकुलेट करना है कि कॉन्वेक्स है या नहीं है वो फंक्शन, तो जस्ट यू कैन टेक टू एक्सट्रीम बंडल, कैलकुलेट द एवरेज ऑफ दिस टू एक्सट्रीम बंडल एंड देन वी कैन कैलकुलेट वेदर इट इज़ प्रेफर्ड और नॉट. मतलब कोई भी फंक्शन हो सकता है. जैसे फॉर एग्जाम्पल सपोज इफ आई राइट यूटिलिटी फ्रॉम x1 x2 इज इक्वल टू x1 स्क्वायर प्लस x2 स्क्वायर. अगर ये फंक्शन लिखा है, इज इट कॉन्वेक्स? कॉन्वेक्स होगा. कॉन्वेक्स होने के लिए एवरेज प्रेफर्ड और एक्सट्रीम है. सो आई टेक एन एग्जांपल, यूटिलिटी फ्रॉम 10,0. 10,0 की यूटिलिटी क्या हो जाएगी? 10 स्क्वायर प्लस 0, दैट विल बी 100. यूटिलिटी फ्रॉम 0,10, that will be 0 plus 10 square. What is utility from the average? So what is average here? Average will be 10 और 0 का average 5, 0 और 10 का average 5. So now it will be 5 square plus 5 square. 25 plus 25, 50. So what is happening that the utility from average is now less and the utility from extreme is more. So it is not convex. Therefore not convex. यहाँ पे इंडिफरेंस का कॉन्वेक्स नहीं होता. तो गिवन एनी फंक्शन वी कैन कैलकुलेट और वी कैन शो वेदर इट इज़ कॉन्वेक्स और नॉट. कॉन्वेक्सिटी के प्रॉपर्टी को जस्ट करना आना चाहिए. सो दिस इज वन इम्पॉर्टेंट इंटरप्रिटेशन. एंड द अदर रीजन फॉर विच वी से दैट इंडिफरेंस कर्व इज कॉन्वेक्स टू ओरिजिन, up to this is basically the assumption part of it. But convexity can be explained by using marginal rate of substitution also. You can add next paragraph. Well behaved indifference curve is convex to origin due to diminishing marginal rate of substitution. Now define that term, where marginal rate of substitution measures the amount of good 2 that consumer is willing to give up. In order to consume one additional unit of good 1. I repeat, MRS measures the amount of good 2 that consumer is willing to give up in order to consume one additional unit of good 1, so that utility remains same. तो MRS कैलकुलेट करने के लिए बेसिकली यू विल यूज दिस डेल्टा x2 बाई डेल्टा x1. और रिमेंबर, जब आप डेल्टा x2 बाई डेल्टा x1 कर रहे हैं तो डेल्टा x2 बाई डेल्टा x1 इज नथिंग बट डिफरेंशिएशन. इट इज dx2 बाई dx1, एंड व्हेनेवर यू डू दैट यू गेट स्लोप. सो व्हाट इज स्लोप ऑफ इंडिफरेंस कर्व? स्लोप ऑफ इंडिफरेंस कर्व इज MRS. और अभी हमने स्टार्ट के फंक्शन में सबसे पहले जो वैल्यू लिखे थे लाइक 5 और 20, यहाँ पे स्लोप कैलकुलेट किया था. बट रिमेंबर, स्लोप का मतलब क्या निकालना है? MRS. तो एट दैट पॉइंट द MRS वैल्यू नंबर वाज कमिंग आउट टू बी -4. फिर वी कैलकुलेटेड स्लोप एट 10 and 10. At that point slope, which is MRS, was coming out to be -1. Slope declining means MRS declining. So if any function, if MRS is constant, then you can say slope is constant. जब slope constant होगा तो line straight बना देंगे, ठीक है. And you can calculate this MRS also by taking the ratio of marginal utility of good 1 upon marginal utility of good 2. MRS can also be calculated by taking the ratio of marginal utility of goods. Marginal utility of goods. And how you can calculate marginal utility of good? By differentiating the function with respect to x1. Marginal utility of good 2 by differentiating utility function with respect to x2. ठीक है. तो जैसे for example, since we are studying the first function itself, in that function it was x1 into x2. utility का function ये लिखा है well behaved में. तो इस function का marginal utility from good 1 क्या होगा? x1 के रेस्पेक्ट पर डिफ्रेंशिएट करेंगे तो क्या बच जाएगा? x2. So marginal utility of good 1 will be x2 and marginal utility of good 2 will be, if you differentiate with respect to x2, x1 will be there. So what is the value of MRS? MRS is the ratio of these two. But ratio of these two means x2 by x1 हो जाएगा. तो x2 by x1 अगर आप जिसको अप्लाई कर लो यहाँ पे, x2 की वैल्यू 20 है, x1 की वैल्यू 5 है, सो 20 by 5 4 का वैल्यू आ जाएगा. यहाँ 10 by 10 1 का वैल्यू आ जाएगा. माइनस साइन सिर्फ नेगेटिव स्लोप को इंडिकेट कर रहा है. सो यू हैव टू ऑप्शन. इफ द इंडिफरेंस का इक्वेशन इज गिवन, डिफरेंशिएट with respect to x1 you get MRS, or utility function is given, calculate the ratio of marginal utility, you will get MRS. Like for example, because यहाँ पे application based question काफ़ी होने वाले हैं. Sem 3 and Sem 4 is basically the, we can say, the core of economics honors. Core in the sense there will be going to be difficulty. That means there will be different form of function that can be created. Just for example, suppose if I write utility function as x1 x2 equal to 2x1 plus 3x2, and if I say what is the shape of indifference curve given this function, now shape depends upon MRS, whether it is convex, straight line, what is the shape. If you have any confusion, just do one thing, calculate marginal utility of good 1. So it is differentiation of that function with respect to x1. So if you differentiate with respect to x1, it will be 2 only. Calculate marginal utility of good 2. Differentiate with respect to x2, it will be 3. So what is the value of MRS? Marginal utility of good 1 upon marginal utility of good 2, that will be 2 by 3, and 2 by 3 is going to be the slope of indifference curve. That means slope of indifference curve is a constant number. Now if it is a constant number, then indifference curve is going to be a straight line. It is going to be a straight line. Slope is constant, though indifference curve will be a straight line. Just answer one thing. I have written 1 2 3 here, 1 2 and 3 here. I said slope is going to be 2/3. So you will connect this 2 with 3 or this 2 with 3. Slope is also perpendicular by base. So when I say slope is 2/3, perpendicular is going to be 2, vertical axis पे 2 आएगा और horizontal axis पे 3. And this line also imply that 2 unit of good 2 is as good as 3 unit of good 1 in terms of utility. और जब ये indifference का straight line बन गया तो ध्यान देना, this will be going to be the second function, and that second function is perfect substitute. We have to study different form of the utility function. So there are different form of utility function. In this lecture we have just studied the first one, which is well behaved, the most common one. So generally we draw indifference curve like this. So there are different ways in which indifference curve can be expressed. I have given just few example of that in this first class. it could be written as x1 into x2, it could be written as x1 plus x2, it could be minimum of, it could be log of x1 plus x2, or it could be maximum of. So there are different form of utility function that can be written. But in any utility function that you will write, you have to satisfy the assumption of completeness, transitivity, monotonicity. Now it can be convex for well behaved, but it is not always convex. So there can be different shape as well. So this chapter is basically going to explain different form. Now some form may be not written in the book, but you must be familiar with that function as well. So we'll try to explain all possibilities here. So this unit, that is consumer behavior, in this first chapter, obviously it has to be explained in detail. So we have to explain all type of preference function. We have just explained the well behaved one. So in this chapter explain what consumer wants to buy. Next chapter will determine what consumer can buy. So once you combine both, that means what consumer can buy, that will be represented by the budget line. What consumer wants to buy, that will be determined by the choice or preference. But preference is represented by indifference curve. So given that budget constraint, consumer will choose the optimal bundle from which utility will be maximized. So this will be referred as the optimal choice. So we have to calculate everything now numerically. A utility function will be given, budget line information will be given. We have to calculate the optimal choice for different type of welfare function. And when we calculate the optimal choice, remember the choice could be anywhere on that budget line, including the corner one. That means consumer may sometimes only buy only good one or only good two. So in this class I have just introduced you about the consumer behavior and chapter preference and utility. More of it we will continue in this second lecture with perfect substitute, utility function, perfect complement, then what is the shape of it, how to calculate MRS here, what is the meaning of Cauchy linear, and what is the maximum function, and what will be the concave preference. So we'll continue with this preference and utility chapter. So at the end I repeat one thing, this intermediate micro 1 syllabus is completely new in terms of the reference book. So your explanation should be according to that book. So don't just take any notebook from your seniors and think that it will be applicable in that way, because your reference book is totally different from the previous batch. Clear? So we'll follow according to the new syllabus. We'll continue with consumer theory with more utility function in the next class. Thank you.